If you really believe you are privileged, let me show you how much privilege people have over parents and their kids.
I am Sage's mother, better known as Nana. I adopted Sage after my son died when she was still a baby. She's been through 6 foster homes by then, but we loved her, and she blossomed into a joyful, lively girl who made music and art. Puberty began and COVID hit, and she was treated for depression and anxiety, at times very severe. Her teachers shared any concerns with me so her treatment could be adapted. The transparency ended in August of 2021 when Sage started high school. She started a public high school, and she told me that all the girls there were bi, trans, lesbian, emo.
As if that's not going to affect the kids' choices. No, that's what they tell you.
And she wanted to wear boys' clothes and be emo. Because I saw it as just a phase, it was fine with me. But at school, she told them something different. She was now a boy named Brooke Draco with male pronouns. Sage asked the school not to tell me, and they did not tell me, even though I informed them of her mental health history and medication. If I had known, this would be a much different story. She was terribly bullied. No one told me, but boys followed her, touched her, threatened violence and rape. Something happened in the boys' bathroom, but for 2 days, the school told me nothing. They kept meeting with Sage alone, and she became so distraught, they called me to pick her up.
Translation, it feels like they used the opportunity to get some moral point to defend the person, but they didn't solve the issue. But they still keep using that person to remind them we're doing our best. It's all about the moral points. They don't care about the after effect because it gives them moral points.
That evening, I found a hall pass labeled Draco, and Sage told me she was identifying as a boy, and that her counselor said she could use the boys' bathroom. She'd been jacked up against the wall by a group of boys. She was crying, terrified. I said, just stay home, we'll figure it out. That was my last conversation with Sage for 5 months. The night she ran, she thought to a young friend she'd met online. She left a note saying she was scared of what would happen if she stayed. The sheriff, FBI, search dogs were called in. I dropped to my knees in prayer.
And that's when I know they are the ones that put that negative image that, oh my God, your parents pray? This is going to happen to you. That's why she thought it was logical to escape. And it gets worse.
9 days later, the FBI found her in Baltimore. My baby had been lured online, sex trafficked by DC, then Maryland. She was locked in a room, drugged, gang raped, and brutalized by countless men. It was night. The FBI told us to pick her up in Maryland the next morning. We packed our cars with blankets and stuffed animals and arrived by 8 a.m. But we were told we couldn't see her and were summoned before Judge Robert Kershaw late that afternoon. They didn't even tell Sage that we came for her. We finally entered the courtroom, and Sage appears on a huge Zoom screen from a prison cell. She looks tiny and broken, and I cry out, I love you, Sage. Sage responds, I love you too, Nana. But attorney Anissa Khan rebukes us. She is a he, and his name is Draco, not Sage. We were floored. What?
So you help find your own kid. They don't even tell you. They tell you stay away. You finally see the person. You try your best to acknowledge her because she's there. You have no idea what the heck has happened. And that is an opportunity to remind you, yo, that's a he. What are you doing? Rakatangkang. And now you're like, hey man, I don't understand. I'm just happy she's alive. But you don't mean to misgender. You're just so emotional in that moment. They don't care because it's all about the messaging. And I'm like, bruh, can you understand that certain people are so distraught? You know something happened to your daughter, the case, pim pam boom. And you're like, I don't have time for this little mumbo jumbo. I want the person to be good, healthy, and alive. No, that's not important at that moment.
Khan accuses us of emotional and physical abuse, that we are misgendering her. Even though we just learned she claims to be trans and we're willing to use any name and pronouns to bring her home. My husband was so tearful he kept forgetting the new pronouns, so the judge had the bailiff remove him from the courtroom. I was pleading for my child to be returned and treated for her unspeakable trauma. Judge Kershaw told me if I used the word trauma again, he would throw me out too. For over 2 months, he withheld custody. He housed Sage in a male quarters of a children's home. Sage told me she was the only girl and repeatedly assaulted.
Remove the ideology. Biological woman, one with a bunch of biological men that come from unique conditions. Why would you not consider that a bad solution?
She was given street drugs by the other kids, and Khan told her she didn't care. She just wanted to win the case and all the way to Supreme Court if necessary. Khan tried to prove abuse, but we were eventually cleared by both states of all charges. Sage later told me Khan had told her to lie, that we hit her. Khan even had Sage's school counselors testify against us, though they barely knew Sage.
Because they don't need to explore the situation, they just need to affirm it. That's knowing enough.
Know us at all. Khan told my precious child I didn't want her anymore. I found out Sage never received any of the letters I sent her. Sage ran from the children's home and disappeared for months. They told me she might already be gone forever, but I couldn't give up, and I finally found a tip on her social media that led the marshals to her in Texas.
By that knowledge, it would not even surprise me this lady that told her all the things. Your mom is not contacting you, your mom, you need to tell her beating you, bada beam, bada boom. It feels like she kind of orchestrated this thing just to, hey, gain some moral points in a system ready to prove her moral points.
She had been drugged, raped, beaten, and exploited. This time I was able to be with her for the traumatic rape exam and to bring her home. Back in Virginia, she entered the mental health facility that Judge Kershaw had ordered, as it would affirm her as a male. The therapist began pressuring her to have her healthy breasts removed. Sage was too scared to protest, but she asked me to secretly buy her girls' clothes because she wanted to be a girl, but keep them in the car. It took a kind lawyer, Josh Hetzler, to secure her discharge.
Can you secretly buy me the clothes that we used in the beginning, where I felt a little safe in a different direction, because finally I understand what the heck is happening, but I'm not allowed to say it out loud because they think it's even more abuse, so I'll be further away from you? That shouldn't be a logical way that your kid needs to speak to you. Unless you want to disprove it and say she's inventing her, well, go find me a case where a mother invented all these things for a daughter or son that lost a daughter or son. The fact that you go so far to prove such a lady wrong, I'm like, would you approve to keep a person safe in a very abusive location? Why? Oh, now I remember why. Usually you just say that doesn't happen, it's just one case, it's anecdotal.
After almost a year, Sage was finally home, safe, alive. Sage is receiving professional trauma care. The first trafficker has already been convicted. Sage has nightmares, panic attacks, rape-related medical issues, but there's hope. I told her she's not broken, she's just scarred. And part of that hope is that in courageously sharing her story, others will be saved. Sage said she doesn't know who she was back then. She wasn't a boy. She just wanted to have friends.
And that is something that the therapist many times and the psychologist, they don't have time to do that because they're afraid they would be seen as a phobic person and they lose the license, or they get some moral points to just proceed with that thing. And I'm like, it's kind of dangerous, man. I just want to care for a person, but don't find a reason to push your ideology on a kid that is so young that it would lead to chop 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 because you're saying it's going to affirm you and you're going to feel better. You don't need your parents.
But her school, the judge, the attorney, and the doctor were all blinded by their ideology. The consequences for Sage were unspeakable. Please don't let ideology harm another child. Let parents do our jobs. We know our children best, and we love them a million times more.
And all I'm saying, this is a parent that had to debate the lawyers, the judges, the doctors, the teachers, and I'm like, don't you think it's just a little too much? that a bunch of people are disconnecting you from your kid, telling your insecure kid that had a lot of issue, a kid that 6 other families already rejected, and then you come and be like, hey, I see a bunch of insecurity. I think it's because your parents are Christian. I don't know, man. It just feels very, very disingenuous. Other than that, I'm happy things are going better for them. I pray for them. Let me know what you guys think about the whole situation, because this is one of the few stories that I've heard and I actually felt very disgusted with the human race.